All right, welcome. Who is Marat Khusnutdinov? He is the 2020 second round pick of the Minnesota Wild. He just signed his entry level NHL contract today, either this morning or yesterday. Because of the time difference, I'm not 100% sure. His KHL contract was officially terminated. The season is over for his current team. They did not make the playoffs. He's on a pretty rough looking team. They didn't do so hot this year, and his contract was going to term or end regardless. He did not want to sign an extension. He made it clear he wanted to spend his future in North America just before this season, right? So between 2022 or in the 2020 summer of 2023 is a better way to put it. So who is he? Well, he's a 5'11", 176-pound center. And these numbers are off of Cap Friendly. I don't know. Maybe they're a little different. Maybe he's a little heavier. Maybe he's a little lighter. Maybe he's a little taller or shorter. Right, but that's just what Cap Friendly has. He's 21 years old as it stands. His birthday's in July. So, he's 21 for this entire season. Next year, he'll be for the entire season, he'll be 22. Again, he signed his entry-level contract. It's for 2 years. Remember, that third year is burnt because he'll be playing in the NHL this year at $925,000. He'll be a restricted free agent at the end of this contract, to nobody's surprise. So let's talk about his stats. And I only have his KHL stats. He's got a ton of stats up on Cap Friendly of various leagues, the VHL, the MHL, kind of the minor leagues to the KHL, which is the Russia Professional League. Also known as, depending on who you ask, the second best hockey league in the world, and there's a lot of good ones. But the KHL is an elite league. Probably it's below the NHL in terms of quality. NHL's top tier. Then you got the KHL, and then it's kind of up for debate. Is it the AHL? Is it Liga or whatever you have? Right? That's all debatable. So we're just talking KHL stats. He's got some internet. He's got a lot of stuff going on Cap Friendly. It's fun to look. Not many games, like with the World Junior Classic, which was canceled in 2020. The Russia under 25 team, right? He's got all that stuff. So as a 19-year-old, he played as an 18-year-old. I don't have that on the board. What is this? So this is 2020 to 2021. He played 12 games, had 2 assists, 2 points, right, as an 18-year-old. Nothing too crazy, extremely limited ice time, but he showed potential, right? So he turns 19. He gets a little bit more of a chance. He's playing bottom 6, a bottom 6 role with SKA St. Petersburg. 32 games played as a 19-year-old, 5 goals, 7 assists, 12 points. Is a +4, again, age of 19. In his age 20 year, 2022, 2023, last season, with SKA St. Petersburg. 63 games, 11 goals, 30 assists, 41 points. He's a +15. That team was pretty good. He wasn't the top scorer on that team, but he was up there. He was playing, I think he started the season as the third-line center. He spent some time as the first-line center, spent some time as the second-line center, kind of went up and down between the top 6, but was playing a top 6 role on a pretty good KHL team. Again, 20 years old. That's impressive for a 20-year-old to be playing at that ability at such a high level of hockey. This upcoming season, or this current season, remember entering the season, he made it very clear he wanted to play North America. He was heavily considering this. So as a result, as we usually see with KHL teams, significant role reduction and ice time reduction. So same team, SKA St. Petersburg. He played 6 games, had no points. He was a -2, again, age of 21, and he gets traded. Right, he was getting about, I don't know, it was a 4th-line role he was playing in SKA St. Petersburg. I think he was a healthy scratch a game. Gets traded to HK Sochi, which is a bottom-of-the-barrel team. Think San Jose Sharks, rough in the NHL. Maybe Columbus Blue Jackets is more appropriate. 49 games played, again, in a bottom 6 reduced role. Started on that 4th line. Got promoted to that 3rd line, but you can only produce so much with limited ice time. 6 goals, 14 assists, 20 total points in 49 games. He was a -12. So I haven't had a chance to actually look at this player play. Stats would tell you he's pretty responsible defensively. He's a solid two-way centerman. Now, that's really hard to tell once you actually see him in NHL play. Remember, KHL, their ice surface is wider. The rules are a little different, right? Scoring's a little below, or it's much lower than the NHL. Being a point per game in the KHL is like, you're in contention for the MVP race, and you might win it. So keep that in mind. Scoring isn't as high, so you look at these stats, you're like, well, that's not super impressive. So you'll probably expect a reduction in points in the NHL, when in reality, it can be up in the air. We've seen high scores from the KHL come to the NHL and be abysmal. We've seen low scores from the KHL come to the NHL and just be incredible. And we've seen, high scores in the KHL translate well to the NHL. Think Tarasenko, think Kirill Kaprizov, right? Think what's his name? Kucherov. I kept wanting to say Kuznetsov. It's not him. So this is exciting. This is also a versatile player. He can play center. I don't know what his faceoff percentages are, but he can also play wing. I would expect him to start his first game or two as a winger for the Minnesota Wild and work his way to center. Now remember, the Minnesota Wild they're pretty handcuffed when it comes to players they can trade at the trade deadline. There's a lot of no movement clauses, no trade clauses, and some of those contracts teams are not going to want to pick up, right? So there's also that. So guys on the block most likely are Brendan Duhaime and Connor Dewar. So this could begin to instigate a Connor Dewar trade. Maybe we see Marat Khusnutdinov on that fourth line starting as a center. And kind of working his way up from there. We'll see, though. This guy's talented. I'd like to see him play meaningful minutes, at least in that top nine, maybe a third-line center role to start. But, with this team and John Hines' coach, who knows? He's had some issues really giving younger guys shots in Nashville. He somewhat is having that issue in Minnesota. We saw Marco Rossi start and spend nearly the first 2.5 periods on that fourth line, which Marco Rossi is one of the better centermen on the team, and has been playing well. Whereas Freddie Gaudreau, more of a veteran player, has done nothing in the last 10 games. He has like 3 or 4 shots in those 10 games, no points, something like that. I don't have his exact stats in front of me. Maybe he's got an assist thrown in there, but he's been pretty rough to watch. He started as a second-line center last game, so your guess is as good as mine as to where he'll slot into the lineup. I'm sure he'll bounce all over the lineup just a bit. Ideally, that middle six is where he's projected to be at an NHL level as that second or third line center. It obviously depends on how his game translates to the NHL. But this could be a future top 9 center, right? If you need to really bolster that second line, you bump Joel Eriksson down to that second line. You have Marat as that first line center with Kaprizov. Maybe they have some chemistry. They both speak Russian. I think Kaprizov played at SKA St. Petersburg, for example. That could work. Maybe Khusnutdinov could pop off and really supplement Kaprizov and really form a solid first line and give you at least top 6 depth there. So we'll see what that has to look like. I'm curious. I'm excited to see him play. I would anticipate we're not going to see him play in the next game, right? Because he's still got to move from Russia. That's kind of a big move. We could see his NHL debut delayed a bit. So don't get too excited, but it's pretty excited that this player is coming over, and he should have an impact right out of the gate. And he's 21 years old. He's a young kid. He's going to grow. He's going to get better. And lastly, again, I do want to emphasize the ice surface is different, right? We're seeing that with Jesper Wallstedt in the AHL. There was an adjustment period when he came to the AHL, right, from Europe. Especially for goaltenders, you're getting different angles on pucks and so on. So the first maybe 10, 15 games for Wallstedt, he wasn't great in the AHL because that's a significant adjustment, especially for a goalie. And it is for a forward too. When you think you have more ice to work with than you do, and then you start running into the walls or other players, that can cause some issues as well. So I wouldn't expect Khusnutdinov to just start off the gate and score at a point per game for the rest of the season. There is going to be an adjustment period. It's a slightly different game in North America than it is in Russia. The rules are different. There's a lot of differences. So not only that, but who knows if he even speaks English? Like, that's also an adjustment. Living in a new country with a new language, with all new people and line mates and teammates, traveling to all these cities you really aren't familiar with. It could be a lot, especially for a 21-year-old. So give it time. Ideally, he needs to play meaningful minutes to end the season. We'll see if the Wild make the playoffs. If so, great. If not, it is what it is. it is what it is. But this is a great sign. The other Russian prospect that is highly touted is Daniel Yurov. I'm just going to talk about him just a little bit. I forget what team is playing for. That's rough. I'm going to look that up. Give me 1 second. Yurov. Daniela Yurov. That's why, because I have no idea how to pronounce it. Magnitogorsk. That's where he's playing, I guess. Regardless, Yurov's team is the top team in the KHL, and he is the leading scorer on that team. Right? He is a winger. He's a left winger. Nope, right winger. Right? So Boldy, Zuccarello, Yurov. One of these guys might have to move to the left wing. Yurov is only 20. He's setting some pretty impressive records to prominent NHL comparable players, right? Tarasenko, Kucherov, Kaprizov, right there with him in KHL stats for young kids, which is incredibly impressive. But Yurov, we don't know. First off, his season isn't over yet. They still have, do the playoffs and so on. But he's also leaning towards extension, as reports have come out from, like things like The Athletic, right? Reputable sources, that he's leaning towards signing an extension in the KHL. He said, aside from the summer when he got a couple texts from Kaprizov, he hasn't really heard anything from the Minnesota Wild organization or players. That includes Kaprizov. That includes GM Bill Guerin. He said he doesn't really feel all that wanted in Minnesota, and they do want him in the KHL, so he's leaning towards re-signing there, which is a bad sign. Yurov and Khusnutdinov, I'm going to get his name right on the first try every time one of these days, but I've been working on it for a year now. Yurov is another guy you want to come over probably as soon as possible to really help you push towards a playoff run and Stanley Cup final at the very least. He's one of those key pieces that his game should translate extremely well to NHL play. I think Khusnutdinov's play should also translate well, but again, sometimes you never know. So this is one of the two big Russian prospects coming over. They also have Vladimir Firstov. I'm not going to pull his stuff up right now, but he's doing pretty well in the KHL as well. Similar to Khusnutdinov in terms of stats, but I think he's a winger. So there are guys. We don't know if Firstov's going to come over. I haven't really heard anything on Firstov. I think he mentioned he wanted to once, and that was all we heard from it. So I don't know. But if you can get this guy, Khusnutdinov, he'll start. Maybe that helps bring Yurov over. If you can get Khusnutdinov and Yurov over, maybe you have an all Russian line. Maybe you have Khusnutdinov centering a line with Kaprizov and Daniel Yurov. All three are excellent players. Marat, kind of the question mark, and how much of an impact is he going to have? But nonetheless, this is something the Minnesota Wild need to continue to push with Daniel Yurov, right? Show that you got Khusnutdinov over here, he's happy. You got Kaprizov over here a few years ago, he's happy. You can make it work. So we'll see, but this is exciting for Minnesota Wild fans. I really want to talk about it because I've been raving about this kid for years. Again, probably not going to come in and score 30 goals. Probably looking at that second or third line center role, right, which really helps them down the middle, which they really need. So you have Joel Eriksson Ek, Marco Rossi, and Khusnutdinov as your top 3 centers, which is a pretty solid top 9 for the center depth. And whoever, Freddie Gaudreau, right? He could play 4th-line center minutes. You also have Ryan Hartman. So you have those wingers as well that can also slot in as a center and take faceoffs, which is always nice to have. So that's my little rant. Marat, Khusnutdinov, exciting for the Wild. Daniel Urov needs to come over next. Needs to come over ASAP, right? To really help this team progress further. But that's all I have for now. I appreciate you watching. If you know anything about this dude, let me know what you think. At the moment, the pronunciation, Marat, Khusnutdinov, that might change, right? Depending on how he wants his American counterparts to pronounce his name. We could see that change on the Minnesota Wild broadcast. We see, I've seen some people report on this guy, and there's no idea how to say his name appropriately. So, and I'm sure I'm butchering it too. So, that might change as well. All right, that's all I got. I appreciate you. Take care. All right.